It's like, okay, now it should be live. And now everyone remember what you're talking.
Wait, we're supposed to talk?
Okay, so I will do a little bit of introduction. This couldn't be less professional, actually, or at least I don't want it to be more professional. You can tell from the intro title I gave to the YouTube video. Anyways, for those who watch, you probably know me. You know Rodney. Then we have two new faces, at least for this kind of format, which is first of all Michael to my right.
Hi.
Wrong direction. This direction. We met at the conference. He's also a maintainer of a popular open source project. And Jeremy, below me, maintainer as well. We share the same struggle, let's say, yep. Right? But maybe everyone or both of you could give a brief introduction about the thing you're doing, just very brief. And Jeremy, maybe you start with fluent validation, right?
Yeah. So,
or is there anything else? I don't know.
So fluent validation is the main thing that I work on in the .NET world. That is so it's an open source library for building validation rules for objects, and I've been working on that for about 12 years now. I think I started it in 2008, so it's been a long hobby. So I don't actually do any paid .NET work at the moment. The company I work for does Drupal and PHP, so fluent validation is really the only sort of .NET stuff that I'm involved in at the moment. And was there anything else?
I thought John Skeeter's the only one who does .NET for a hobby, but like the second one I know now.
Oh, yeah. John Skeeter's actually paid for it, though. I mean, he does .NET stuff for Google.
Well, maybe it was some time ago, but I do know, or at least I think I remember then that he was mostly working in Java, right?
Depends. Might be, but I just saw a lot of commits from him into the Google Cloud Docs.
Yeah, I think that was a bit later. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Michael Staib. I'm the maintainer of the Hot Chocolate project, which is a GraphQL server for .NET, which is also a couple of years old. And yeah, it's a good project for nights, as I think all of you are doing it in free time. So
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. But I'm doing .NET also as paid. Yeah, so it's my main source of income also. I'm at the moment at a project working for Swiss Life. It's a insurance company in Switzerland. And yeah, they are also doing a lot of fun stuff. So
I really have one question I have to ask up front, and this is for Jeremy. Fluent validation. What was first? Fluent assertions or fluent validation?
I think fluent validation was first.
Validation.
I think, but fluent and hibernate was before that.
Okay.
And that was my inspiration back in the day, I think.
And the hibernate, I remember that library. That was a fun one.
Yeah.
I recently said that to Dennis Duman, who's maintaining fluent assertions, and I told him for me fluent assertions was kind of the inspiration because I also got hooked up onto the fluent APIs a lot, even with my project before the current one. But I pushed it to far too high limits because it was all just fluent and nested like 3 times and very, very hard to maintain also.
Yeah, but people love it. But how did it come that you went with .NET and started the Project Fluent validation? If you're not doing .NET in your day work.
So I was doing .NET in my day work at the time. So this was back when everyone was code generating their database access entities from the database using various code generator tools. But before Entity Framework was around, and one of the big things was, well, how do you define custom logic in your code generated entities without it being overwritten every time you regenerate them and stuff like that. And I think this was before .NET introduced partial classes as well to help with that kind of thing. So it was sort of early .NET 2 days, and yeah, and then .NET 3.5 came along, and
the world changed.
Yes, it did, and Lambda expressions and all that. And I thought, oh well, it'll be kind of useful to have a way of defining custom validation rules outside of these code generated entities, so I don't have to mess around trying to, figure out how to persist the custom logic when the code gen ran again and regenerated stuff. So I wanted to separate that logic out into a separate class, and yeah, sort of it went from there really. And it started off as a little internal project for the employer I was working at the time, and then I got permission to open source it and sort of put it out there and just carried on working on it as part of my job almost, and then it kind of took off over the years, and I moved on from that company, and it stayed around, and people kept using it. So I've kept working on it, even though the place I originally built it for, I haven't worked for them for over a decade. So
yeah, I sometimes read some of your tweets when something breaks. Like,
right.
It's fun to follow.
Yeah, a rant about something.
Yeah, about I don't know, ASP.NET APIs. Just
So I have a question, and I'm going to direct it at you, Jeremy. So I do paid .NET work, and I work on a .NET open source library, right? And I'm fortunate enough for the project that I work on is using and consuming my library, so I'm getting a chance to use it. So do you find that not working in the .NET space makes it harder or more mentally challenging, not necessarily from a dealing with the code perspective, but for dealing with the library itself, because it's not something you do every day?
Yeah, definitely. I think especially from the point of view of which features are going to be most useful for people, that kind of thing. It's sometimes a bit hard to get my head into that because I'm not working in it day to day. I try to kind of keep up on, the current patterns and practices for building .NET applications so that I can sort of keep my head in that world. But yeah, it is slightly challenging not dog fooding the project. I think.
But how much time do you spend extra on Fluent validation?
It sort of varies depending on how much free time I have and how much I want to work on it, because there can be times where it's very frustrating and I'm just like, oh, I'm not going to touch this thing for the next 2 weeks. And then sometimes I'll spend a whole Saturday working on it or something, and then it's like, oh, I've forgotten to eat lunch again because I've been working on this thing. So it really does vary. I try and be responsive to questions on the issue tracker. So even if I'm not actively writing code for it, I do try and check the issue tracker every day just in case somebody's needs some help with something. But yeah, so it's very non-committal answer, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So I think I have another question, and I feel like this has become like ask Jeremy a question.
It's an interview already, yeah.
Right, but I got the man sitting here, so I might as well ask him some questions. Yeah. So, okay, so you don't do it during the day. You built this thing that solves this problem, and now you no longer have that same problem. Like you no longer experience that problem. has there been anybody else that has, I don't know, that has been around the project for any length of time that might have, even a fraction of your knowledge on the project that could come in and alleviate any of that mental churn that you have to do?
That's a really good question, and the answer is unfortunately not. And that has been quite a frustrating thing. Is that I am the only person really that works on Fluent Validation. It's a bit imbalanced because it has a lot of users, but only me working on it. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it is what it is. There's never really been anyone that's interested in taking on a more committed development role for it. I get contributions from like drive-by contributors who will submit a pull request for this little thing or that little thing, and that's great, and those are all very welcome. But there's very few people who have stuck around to actually help out with stuff, and I'm not sure if that's just the immaturity of the .NET open source world, or that I did something wrong, or I don't know. But it has been a challenge for sure.
Yeah, it's difficult to get contributors that contribute over a longer time and really commit to the project.
And I think as well, though, that also leads to an issue where I'm very hesitant to accept any big pull requests or any big changes, because I can guarantee I'm going to be the one that has to support that thing. And I've made that mistake in the past where I've accepted big contributions that have then caused me no end of trouble, and in the end I've ended up rewriting them or something like that. So I'm much more diligent now about saying no to contributions if I don't think they're a good fit than I was in the early days, when it was just like, yeah, everyone contribute everything. I'll accept everything.
When you say that
was a mistake.
I think everybody starts like that. You have a new open source project, and in the beginning you say, yeah, everybody in, and then you have to fix these things then in the end.
It's interesting. For Michael, I mean, like I said, we've met in real life already, and he has a very huge advantage talking about open source development, which is that his brother is also part of the project, right?
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah, the good thing is, but I wish there were more. Like we have 3 main contributors, which is my brother, and I also have. We could say it's a stepbrother now. He came into this project and did a few commits, and now Pascal, the third real maintainer for Chocolate, is also putting huge work in.
Well, one thing I also wanted to scratch a little here is what's really interesting. What you're doing is are those community stand-ups, something that people also see with the .NET Foundation stand-up, and Michael, they have that for the project, and everyone from the Slack channel is invited. I mean, I also do this with a Slack channel. I mean, just having a Slack channel. But they post the links to the Slack channel, and people can join if they're interested, or if just like a regular thing, right? And I think that's, I think Pascal, as far as I know, also started this way, right? Joining for.
Yeah, it's actually, we started doing, so first Rafi and me were doing it, and then we started to invite the community to really have a say in what we develop and discuss it. And it started really with a 3-person on a YouTube stream, and I mean the Zoom meeting is open, and we started it because in the GraphQL community they have this open approach. Everybody can go to the GraphQL working group. It's not a closed group, and we thought that is a very good approach to get people involved. And I mean, we have 3 main contributors, but I would say we have 10 more contributors that are regular contributors. And this started by inviting people and letting them also, put in some direction, let them be part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different. There are one-person projects, and I saw a lot of those open source projects where there's just one person in charge, and then something happens to that person. This person is not anymore interested, and then the project dies. And I wanted to make sure in the beginning that this doesn't happen.
And also imagine if I would do the community stand-ups and I would just be there alone. I would just talk to myself and like, okay, next one. Oh, okay.
I'd show up.
Yeah, I would also. I don't know if I could contribute, but no.
Okay.
But I think that the moment you invite people into something, there are always a couple of people that turn up. I mean, the last stand-up, there were like I think 13 people on the call. It's
oh, nice.
It's a 2 hours call most of the times, and you have to be really committed to spend 2 hours of your daytime, nighttime, depends when it is, on such stand-ups. So it has grown.
So sometimes it's really something that I wish I could do, like in an instant manner. Like if someone puts up an issue, and it reminds me a bit of what Jeremy said. If you're too far from maybe their problems, and I do have that issue quite a lot of times. I don't know, maybe because the project is quite versatile in the sense of where it is used. But I have this quite often that I have no idea what people are talking about, and I would just like to have a quick call button next to it and ask, okay, could we please boil it down to a more abstract problem? Yeah.
I mean, you have a topic that is very tough. I mean, build. It's what everybody tries to avoid, having something to do with a build system. So I'm also using Nuke, by the way. Just because it solves so many problems on so many levels. But it is actually a thing nobody wants to do, and that's why I'm happy you're doing it.
It's funny. Many people think about other people's project that way.
Yeah. I know. No, but build is a hard problem because it's difficult. I ended up in my companies always doing the build. Because many people try to say, no, I don't want to do it, because you always have to deal with a lot of consoles, piping in outputs of one console application to the next console application, which actually Nuke takes away this problem. But that is what build is most times about. Very difficult console orchestration, I would say.
Yeah, but working on that also just resulted out of own demand. Let's say I was having the test framework project before, and then at some point I thought, oh, PowerShell, no thanks, let's do something better. And then the commits to the previous project went to 0. and a new thing was born. Well, which was okay. I mean, over 3 years I got not that it's a huge indicator, but I had like 30 stars over a period of 3 years. It was interesting to work on that from a research point of view.
What was your first project? Tell us.
It was a test framework, or a framework for writing test frameworks, actually. And yeah, it's funny because at some point I could re-implement MSpec, the Mission Specifications test framework, with my framework below it. And bless you.
Thanks.
And that was working out great. But one of the flavors that I put on top was a way where you could write tests in as statements. So not as the usual way as you have it now with all the major test frameworks, where you have a test class plus a bunch of methods, which each reflect a test, or mostly, except if you have test cases where they multiply. But in that case, you would write them as one statement. If you have one action that you want to test, then you initialize that with one statement, let's say, and after that everything is fluent. Which means if you test one single method and you have like 10 test cases, then you might end up with one semicolon after 200 lines of code or something. That was what I meant with pushing fluent interfaces to their limits.
Too far.
That was a bit far, yeah, because also, I mean, everything worked and that was nice, but it's after a while it becomes very difficult to see where do these parentheses end, right? I mean, there are a couple of tools where they highlight the other parentheses from which you're currently selected. But if it's out of the view box, out of what I can currently see in the editor, then it's no use.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy that you dropped this project and went on to write Nuke.
Sure.
Because that's helping me today.
The same.
But that is interesting, and that is maybe something more controversial. When I started, of course, I wanted people to use it, because I thought I have faced some issues with other frameworks, and that's all right. Not everyone is facing these issues, but of course, I would have liked to for more people to use it. Like, I mean, for the adoption rate to be a bit higher, right? But what's interesting for the .NET open source ecosystem is that it's actually, I can't really compare with any other language like JavaScript or something, but it was actually hard to convince people to even try it. I mean, if you put something out, it's usually you have to, it's not like there weren't a lot of people who were voluntarily trying and comparing frameworks, but it was more like, okay, what does this have, what the other doesn't have, and you're in this.
I think it's not necessarily the trying. I think there are two issues here. First, it's built, and once you have a build system, you don't mess with it. If it's working, you actually many companies won't touch it.
Is that very different to other places? I mean, if you have one OR mapper.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, because the .NET APIs, I understand, it compiles. It's very easy to fix. But when you have set up this build system with all the tools and it pipes, it works, you're not going to touch it very often, because it's very time consuming. Every time I touch a build system, it's like a week of my life is gone. And
so it's a unique problem to me, you say?
Yeah, I just say so. So the first point here is it's you don't touch the build system very often. When you have a system that works for you, you won't change it, other than you have a problem. Mm-hmm. And I just tried yours because we actually knew each other a bit longer, and I didn't try Nuke because my cake build worked a bit, but it worked very rubbishly. That's why I said, okay, let's give Nuke a try. And then I changed everything.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So yeah, sorry.
Well, no, I was going to say, I wrote a post about this not too long ago. As a matter of fact, that post is what landed me on Nuke's doorstep.
We're talking way too much about my project.
Oh, you brought it up. Don't be mad at me, because now I'm talking about the thing you brought up, sir. You sit back and you listen to me talk bad about your project.
Yeah, say something bad. That's all right.
Yeah, But that's the thing. Like we look at code as something that's alive and breathing, right? Like we look at the code as something that changes on a rapid base, right? Like that's the whole point of a sprint and these iterations that we have is to move the code along. But we never go back and look at the complexity of our build system versus our code. And I am very much a proponent of, if the complexity of your code is changing, that means that the complexity of your build is changing. You're just not paying attention to it. And if you're not going back and doing a true every so often when the code changes, go back and verify that the build is still correct, you're going to end up with an antiquated build process for this newfangled code that you've written. And then you're going to hit a thing that you can't do. And you have to go back and re-architect the entire build, as opposed to iterating over the build the same way you iterate over the code. I made a change to the code. Do we need to change the build? I made a change to the code. Do we need to change the build? And if you're looking at those things like lockstep things, right? Dev and ops, if you're looking at them correctly, then they both are mutating independently and interchangeably when they need to service one another.
Exactly. And that's I started with that on my open source project. So I put Nuke in there and suddenly my build became code, and now it's refactorable. So I'm working much more in the build now. And when I brought this to the project at Swiss Life, now everybody feels more confident in changing something on the build because it's just code.
It's just code.
Yeah, it's not only me now committing back to the build. It's like we have now 4 or 5 people doing changes there, being confident about it, because it's just C#. That's the thing.
Yes.
But it takes people to realize that and get their toes into there, because they work too much with MS Build consoles and stuff like that.
But by the way, that's also something interesting. At my company, we use more of a custom build system, where build steps can also be part of the assemblies that eventually, as far as I know, at least, get shipped. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe they get stripped out. But what's interesting about that is that you can, if you have certain assemblies, certain projects in your solution, and a couple of build steps are very specific to those projects, then you can put them next to the production code, basically, which is very interesting. I mean, I do a similar thing now with linked files, but I don't link them as compile items on an MS Build level, but just the non-item group. But the interesting thing is that I have those files which do the build orchestration sit next to the project, and that you can do actually with any of the build systems that you might use. I mean, even with PowerShell or Cake or whatever. It's a very, very interesting thing to have this close to each other, to have it local to each other.
You're talking about JetBrains.
I was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but they must have still a very more complex build with all that Java stuff.
Well, not for us, not so much. For the writer team, maybe, but for ReSharper, it was always just.
Oh, you're on the ReSharper team?
Yes.
Oh.
What did you think? I think I'm doing Java in my day job and doing the .NET project by night.
Could have been. Jeremy is doing PHP during
what
the day.
I do, yeah. Pray for me.
There was a very I follow this programmer humor on Reddit, and sometimes that's very great. There was an image of the router, or it was Kaspersky or something, I think, and they had certain filters for their family inside that house that couldn't been searched. And there was a notification about, okay, your children must have searched for something critical. and it was how do I start with PHP or something? I don't know. It was very, very recently, and it was funny.
But how do you end up as a PHP developer when you've done .NET? Okay, you left .NET when it was a framework, .NET framework still, or?
Yes. So actually, my very first job was in PHP, and then I didn't touch it again, and that would have been like 2005, 6 maybe. And then quickly moved into .NET, which was then all I did for a long time. And then I came back to PHP a couple of years ago, not necessarily by choice, but it was more about the team that I work with and the company that I work for. Choice of tech stack is less important to me than the people that I'm working with. And I get to work with my friends, even if it means I'm working with PHP. I get to work with my friends, which is the upside.
Must be good friends.
Yes. Yeah, the guy who I work for is we've been good friends for many years before I worked for him. So it's been nice to do that, but it does mean I work with Drupal and PHP now rather than .NET, but that's okay. It's not my first choice, but yeah, as I say, the team and getting to work with people that I like is more important. And we're still delivering value, even if it's in a different platform, different language. At the end of the day, it's what you deliver to the client that matters, and does it solve their problem? And you can solve that problem in PHP, or you can solve it in .NET, or something else. It doesn't really matter.
Hopefully not Java.
Hopefully not Java.
Yes.
Are you all working in the same city, you and your friends?
No, so our company is all remote.
Remote. Okay, yeah.
One of the guys who I worked with was in the same city as me, and we shared like a co-working space for a while. But he's moved away now. But the rest of our company are spread across the UK.
Mm. I had this decision a couple of years back when I lived still in Vienna, and I was working with my friends. I mean, very, very close. We just went to vacation last week for a week together. But I couldn't take that work anymore. I mean, for me, it was really it was just the friendship with my colleagues, and the thing that we built was, I don't know, I wasn't interested at all, and that part was much better with JetBrains actually. I mean, tools was something I just had to think about it today. Why was that? Yeah, because I bought some new how do you call it? Tesa, Michael? How do you call that?
Tesa. Sellotape.
Yeah, like tape.
Sellotape.
And we bought some new, and it reminded me that when I was young, I was mostly interested to have all my utilities on my desk in a ready to go state and have it clean beside each other. But actually working with it was not one of my specialties at that time. So yeah, that's very interesting. I was always more about the tools than actually using it or something.
You're saying that, and the same is true for me, but not for tools. I'm interested in frameworks. But I most of the times I don't use my frameworks. I just use them to figure things out if it feels good. For me, code always has to feel good also, not just do good things. It also has to, I don't know, have a good feeling. So, but I'm mostly doing frameworks. So that's basically why I started Hot Chocolate, building a GraphQL framework. But I'm actually not interested in those business applications that deliver value to the client, as Jeremy said. that's a thing that I don't have any interest in. I don't know.
So it's more about producing something good that is helpful to others, right?
Yes. Yeah. It sounds like charity. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's more or less the same for me. I mean, there's always a point where you could say, okay, that's enough for me, right? And some open source projects also grow that way. which is of course okay. But I guess it's the same for hot chocolate. You have that vision, right? You see something, and in your mind you have that vision, or like, this is possible, that might be possible, this is something we could look at.
It's really about. I think our clients are the developers. Yours as well, Matthias. It's like it's a bit different. I'm not doing something for the end customer. I'm always did something for other developers, and that's for me more fun than doing like really a business application that delivers some end user value.
I agree. It's definitely much more fun to work on my open source projects than it is client facing projects. But at the end of the day, the client facing projects pay the mortgage. So
luckily for me, I always got those roles at companies in common teams that build the frameworks for others. So that's basically what I'm doing at the company in Switzerland. I'm also there building common tools for others.
So that's actually interesting to me, right? Because you say you've always worked on those teams. I actually transitioned from that to starting to work on things that other developers work on. And that transition from being the quote unquote regular developer that was just, doing bug fixes and delivering features to having to architect things that other developers depend on. It's a fun thing, but it's also very scary, right? Because you always have this thought process in your head, like it's going to work this way, and like this is going to be great because it's going to work this way, and then you ship it to consumers and they're like, what is this? Or even better, they find a way to use the thing that you didn't intend to that is either better or worse than your original intention, and you're like, I didn't plan for it to go that way, but this is great. And then there's also the times where it's just like,
oh no.
right. I shipped this thing and it just doesn't, it just flat out doesn't work. So it's like, when I first started down this path, and interesting because I was always scared. Every time I would hit that release button on GitHub, I was like, I'd hit the button and then I'd go like hide in the bathroom in the tub waiting for the tornado to come, because somebody's gonna pull my latest source and they're gonna say, oh, this is broken and you need to fix it and my business depends on it. And I'm like, well, I wish your business didn't depend on it, honestly, but I just gotta be honest with myself. I wish they didn't, but I appreciate the fact that they do, and that's the reason why I'm willing to get in there and help. And that's why I asked Jeremy that question earlier, because he's in a very interesting position, right? He could very easily walk away from Fluent and be done, right? But it's something that he's invested a lot of his time in, and he doesn't want to see go away. So how do we, like, it's not easy to build communities around these things, right? Because you get one or two people, and I think the way that you're doing it with stand-ups is an interesting idea, and I'm actually going to play around with that idea because it makes sense. But getting people in that will help shoulder that burden, right? That people that depend on that software and dog food it already, and find enough value in it that they want to make sure that it's maintained. Because I'm sure that if Jeremy put a thing on the GitHub page today, said, hey, you guys get 3 more months of support and then I'm going to Vegas and I'm never coming back, then everyone would like lose their mind. How are we going to do anything without that? And it's like, well, you should have been planning for that eventuality, right? Like people in the community that are consuming it should be planning for that eventuality, right? I have a vested interest in the software that I consume, right? So the fact that I consume it means I should care for it, but we don't. We just, I consume it, I use it. You own it, you operate it, you fix it. It's just like, how do we make that better?
I hope. Sorry.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say that I hope that is a void that the .NET Foundation will eventually start to fill more. Whether it will get to that point, I don't know, but I'm hopeful that it will.
I don't think they will. because they are central organization. I see them like that. But
by the way, before you continue, I must mention Rodney is now an elected board member.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I mean,
but don't go ahead, say what you have to say. Because I'm gonna have some thoughts to follow up on all this anyway. So please.
Yeah, but I don't think they also should do that. I mean, they should try to help out, but they are not responsible for the open source projects and how they develop. I mean, they can give you help maybe, but I think it's a lot about building your own community. Because if you have people passionate about your project and you get them involved, they will help, they will do things. There are always those developers or users that really come to you, make an issue on your repository and say, like, I need it fixed tomorrow, or why is this feature not in there? Rubbish, and stuff like that. Or I got an issue, like it was, we want this and that feature. I don't know what it was. And then I said, okay, I'm not planning to do it because we have other plans at the moment. And then I said, okay, I'm going to framework XYZ, and because you're not implementing. No, I'm actually never saying that. I always try to involve them. Okay, we can help you implement it, but we are not going to do it. But that's the thing. Getting people involved, being kind, and try to get them into helping out.
So I think there's a middle ground here, and I think that I hear both sides, and I actually agree with both sides. But there's a place in the middle where my hopes are, and my hopes are not that it's the foundation's responsibility to take over the project. I feel that it's the foundation's, and this is just my belief. This is not the belief of the foundation or the board or anybody else. This is Rodney's belief. My belief is that part of the purpose would be the .NET Foundation should help grow communities around these projects. So not necessarily they should come in and take over the projects when the person is ready to step down, but more so they should help foster communities for projects in the foundation so that we don't get to the point where there's a single maintainer, so that they are grooming new maintainers to come in and step down. I think that is not necessarily the responsibility of the foundation, but something that the foundation could do that would help benefit the .NET open source community.
Yeah. And that's my why I'm so a bit how should I say?
Pessimistic?
Not pessimistic, but I just think people shouldn't rely on, okay, if something went wrong with this project, the .NET Foundation will step in, because that should not be the responsibility of the .NET Foundation, and they should not own all the .NET projects or something like that.
I think that is also something that I think you as a user of a library don't want, because just having the let's call it guarantee that after someone stops, because the project belongs to the foundation, okay, someone could step in. That is by far no guarantee that this will succeed. I mean, there's usually, if you maintain something, you have your vision about the project, and like Jeremy also said, sometimes you have to say no, because the ideas that others bring in are, or maybe I don't want to say they're wrong, but they might not fit into the project's perspective. And if someone random joins the project or steps in, then this is by far no guarantee that this will have a good turnout in the end, right?
Yeah, I think it's from an open source project. If you're doing an open source project, I think you should early on try to involve people. That's everybody I meet in the open source community and like maintainers. I think it's something I also talked with Matthias on. I said that the most important thing for me was that I early on had a second person there, and now it's three really that could take over if one of us stepped down. The other two could take over, or just. And I would start as a maintainer very early to get somebody else on board, and not only for the case when you die or when you step down, also for the case to have somebody to discuss stuff with, and also to be able to just take off of the project without people getting worried that your project is dead. So it's always good to have a second person. And that also is another point. It means that you have to share. Because a lot of maintainers, and I know how it is for me, it's difficult to share really with others and share responsibility. Let them also get decisions and ideas that you might not think are the best, or so. It's all about compromises and getting people involved and getting in the end to a good project.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Matt still won't let me help with Nuke though. I've been trying to stick myself in there for like 2 years now. He still won't let me help, but it's so cool. Still big deal.
Sorry, which one of these 7 open issues labeled with first timers was yours?
Probably a lot of them. He's probably got stuff on Nuke assigned to me that I just haven't even done.
Oh yeah, let me see.
Right. Yeah, now let's publicly shame Rodney for being a horrible open source community member and not following up on his tasks. Oh.
No, you give me a lot of support. It's more emotional, but that's
well, it's not just emotional because I mean, so to shed some light on it, and Michael, what you're talking about, like that's how Matt and I became friends. Was he had questions and was like, hey, Rodney, what if I do this? And I'm like, well, I'm consuming it this way. And then he'd like, well, what if I change that? And I'd be like, oh, well, I'm doing this. And I'd be like, hey, how do I do this? And he'd go off, and 2 days later, he'd have this new feature that solved my problem. So yes, that feedback loop, right? That yes. Information is very good when you're building a new project, but like I think the issue that I have, and Jeremy said something, and I'm going to harp on it now. The immaturity, I think the words you use, the immaturity of the .NET open source community.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. Exactly. It becomes, you really understand the open source contract as it's written, right? This I deliver this thing and you use it as is. Like, do we truly understand that? And for somebody that's had a project that's been going for 12 years, right? It's not necessarily that it's too late to build a community, but there are some missed opportunities there, or maybe there weren't. Maybe there was some people that were there and they kind of flaked out throughout the years, whatever the case may be. But we still need to make sure that we solve those problems. So even though we can't go back in time and fix that, is there a way that we can help with this immature .NET open source community, show them a way to become mature, a path towards maturity?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. That is, and if you look at the .NET community as a whole, it's still starting to understand open source, and it's because I mean, before Microsoft went all open source, it was like, okay, we take what Microsoft gives us, and I think that is also an important step that Microsoft has to learn, is they don't have to do everything, and by this also opening up more space for open source. That's also a thing that you have to learn. Because when I started with .NET, it was like Microsoft, we always take what Microsoft does. And what Microsoft doesn't do, doesn't exist.
We can't do. Yeah, we can't even do it. I heard a developer tell me once, if it's not blessed by Microsoft, we won't do it. And I almost, like, my eyes started twitching, and I started having, like, I almost had a, like, wait, you're telling me that if Microsoft doesn't come down from its ivory tower and give you the holy grail, you're not going to drink from it? And I'm like, man, look, I'll pick up any cup off the table and take it. I'm thirsty. I'm trying to, I have real problems I have to solve, and Microsoft isn't for better or worse, they're not looking at the individual issues that developers are facing consuming their tool set, right? They just provide a tool, and then you've got all of these brilliant people that take that tool and build other tools to make working with that tool even easier. And to me, that's a great place to be. And you're right. I think the biggest thing is that Microsoft has to get off this stance where if it's not part of the core framework, it's not good. I mean, what is it? Solid principles tell us that things should be open to extension and closed to modification, right? Like Microsoft,
Yeah.
where are you at on that? Like, let us extend the framework, and then there's no problem, right?
Exactly.
Or is that too real to say on this? That was like,
No. I think and they are opening more and more. I think the ASP.NET team is really good on that now. They are not anymore like we have to own everything. Like identity server, that's the identity solution today. It's not Microsoft trying to do it also, but in a rubbish way, because for 4 years they had a half-baked solution for that. Mm-hmm. But now they say, okay, this is the open source project. They do it good. Let's take them. Or also for Swagger, and there is Swashbuckle or NSWAG. They are not doing it by themselves. They let open source projects grow in there. But other parts of Microsoft have to still learn a lot in that direction. I mean, they're dumping more and more projects out there, but it's not also just dump the code there. Also try to grow a community around that. But it's changing.
Is that true? I mean, also Jonathan is watching, and he was a maintainer for Nancy. And I don't do web stuff and all that, so I have no idea. But isn't that in the same?
Awesome.
But isn't that in the same region? Just because you said they, I mean, yeah, there's always exception to the rule. But isn't
that's
that
exactly what we're talking about, Matt? Like Nancy was literally a different alternative to the web API stack, right? It gave you an alternative way to structure and think about how you actually build a web service or a service, even.
Yeah.
And I want to say, but I can't say for certain, that ASP.NET did take some very good learnings from what Nancy did.
Yes, they did, or at least it appears to.
Right.
They are very similar APIs now, and I mean, in the beginning, Hanselman also blogged about Nancy as a new way to do stuff, and I think it's not necessarily bad that you learn from others, but I mean, if you're competing against one of their main frameworks, ASP.NET Core, it's very, very difficult because they have brilliant people there. But they don't, what I'm saying is they don't have to grow into every corner of that space. That they provide a web server is, and it's a fantastic, ASP.NET Core is fantastic nowadays.
It is good.
But they don't necessarily have to grow into every space. And like if you look at the gRPC stuff, they are doing it, but they involved the project that was already there, as far as I know, or they've started at least with the framework that was there. And I think that's a thing they have to learn, to look what is there, to involve the maintainers of these projects, maybe even contribute to some of these projects. So there is an opportunity to push the community. And in that regard, I mean, Java is much better with open source frameworks. I mean, in Java, the problem is you never know what to use.
Right, they have the opposite problem. We take everything from Microsoft, and they've got to figure out what to take and what not to take. Yeah,
exactly. So a middle ground would be good.
One thing I found quite interesting is when I transitioned from the .NET world to Drupal and PHP was for my day job, is how the Drupal open source community has a very different model to what I was used to in the Microsoft world, where there is no one big company that runs the Drupal project like you have Microsoft in the .NET world. And we were saying about how for a long time. If it wasn't blessed by Microsoft, then people wouldn't use it, or it was very hard to get sign off to use it. While in the Drupal world, there is no one company really that maintains or supports the Drupal source code. The whole Drupal project is owned by the community, as are the third-party modules for it. And it's a very different mindset that I've found a bit strange, really, because I'm used to, Fluent Validation is my project, Nuke is your project. Okay, you've got other people that contribute to it, but at the end of the day, you've got these distinct individual little communities. Well, with the Drupal community, everything is owned by the community pretty much. Yeah, you've got people that maintain, are the maintainers for various modules or whatever, but if those people are not active anymore, it sort of passes to community ownership. Every third-party module is on the Drupal website, and it's this very sort of like collective ownership feel to it, which is a very different thing than what I was used to when I moved into that from .NET world.
It's interesting.
Do you have the same feeling about PHP? Because I mean, what's interesting is I recently only started to set up this GitHub sponsorship, etc. And one thing I got, or one person I got my inspiration from is Caleb Pozio. Hope I pronounced that correctly, but probably not. But he did some stuff, as far as I read, at least, for the PHP community, something around SQLite, if I'm not mistaken. And for him, it was worth a blog post, which is named Introducing Sponsorware. So the model where a new release only happens when a certain number of sponsors is reached. Introducing Sponsorware, how a small open source package increased my salary by 11,000 in 2 days. 11,000 per year. We're saying probably. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't think something like that would be possible in the .NET space.
So it increased it worked for you, this sponsor model, or it didn't?
Yeah, that's very hard to say. Most of the people currently sponsoring, most of them I know very well. Like Rodney said, I'm always interested in their problems. If they tell me and if I think I can abstract it on a proper level, then I will do this as soon as I can. But really, most of the folks that are currently sponsoring are people that I know very well, and that is, in some sense, well, in a way, it motivates me. I don't lie. But on the other hand, I would wish for more companies to do that, because they are ultimately probably the beneficiaries from that.
Yes. Yeah, that is a change. I mean, companies have to change in that way.
I have one company, and I should also mention that Tola Inc. I think they're called, also a remote working company. They were there from the very beginning, even if when I still had the Open Collective account. So from far beginning, and also one friend from close to Munich here, who's also paying that through his company. I mean, he owns a small company. But apart from that, yeah.
Yeah, we also have I have 2 companies in the project that pay regularly, but it's still not that the companies that take the profit from that, actually, because they get a lot of support and help for free. It's not like that it's standard for a company to pay into a project, and maybe even make it possible for maintainers to do that as a day job. I mean, there are a couple of maintainers that I know that reached that level that they could just work from their open source work.
I wish I could do that. I get $5 a month for Fluent validation.
No, really?
So
Really?
this is a very interesting
Really?
topic, and I actually want to talk with you gentlemen about this in the future. I unfortunately have to drop because I've got some other things I got to go do, but this topic is one that I'm trying to help tackle in the .NET Foundation, trying to figure out how we can help get corporations to actually sponsor projects directly.
Yeah.
I think that that's a very important thing for the future of the .NET community, the .NET open source community. So.
Yeah, and that would allow better projects with much better quality if you did that.
So I do have to leave.
Yes.
Matthias, thank you for allowing me to be here yet again. Jeremy and Michael, it was good
allowing. I actually pushed you.
You didn't push me. You just asked. Very, very. Can I say that on stream? Can I say that you did it in a very German manner without it being racist?
No, I have to say, Matthias, I'm a German too. Yeah, emigrate to Switzerland, but he's some of these East Northern Germans that are very pushy. But
it's funny. My best friend is Austrian, so I'm very familiar with it. That's why I laugh at it.
I can't believe it.
Yes, you heard it here first.
I remember correctly, I was asking you if you want to join, and then I told you about the lineup, and you were like, "Oh, Jeremy,
I want to be there. Yeah,
I want to join.
I wanted to meet these gentlemen and talk. Yes, and I appreciate the fact that you. That's why I said I appreciate the fact that you allowed me to be here. I was very sincere. All right, gentlemen, I do have to go. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Yeah. It's been fun.
Thanks. It's been great.
But Jeremy, I have to say, you have to raise more money because
that would be nice.
Because one of the first extensions to Hot Chocolate people asked for was Fluent validation, and it's everywhere. People write Fluent validation extensions for all kinds of frameworks, and they should give back.
What I would love for is, and by the way, I also don't understand why Jeremy. I mean, that was also one of the topics, if I remember correctly, a while ago, that you still don't have a MVP award or something. It sounds like ridiculous if the MVP award is about something, about to award people who bring a lot of stuff to the community. I mean, then it's just a joke that there isn't one already.
But it's I have to say, I'm an MVP. But it's
get out of here.
It's not only about contributing code. MVP involves a lot of community work, engagement into the community. Like I'm actually doing user group work, and so there's a lot of other work involved. It's not just you push code somewhere. It's get more involved. Yeah,
but I don't think it is that way, because you still get those issues that you have where you talk to people. You bring that. I mean, this abbreviation means most valuable professional.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that it's
their notion.
No. Some people think like MVP. They must know everything. They must be the super geeks. And it's actually not about that you contribute very good code to something or are very, very great in .NET. It's about your community involvement. And you could actually be a non-technical. I would say you could be a non-technical MVP, but just doing a lot of conference talks about .NET topics or even other Office topics. You could also be an MVP for Office 365 or stuff like that. I'm just saying an MVP doesn't say anything about how valuable you are as a contributor to an open source project. So it just doesn't say that. An MVP is just just awards you for 1 year. It's also not a thing that you own. It's like for 1 year you are awarded for your work in the community that you did last year, and
okay,
everybody can earn that. And if you want that, I can nominate you if you want.
I remember back in so I've been nominated a few times over the years, and I don't do like conference talks or user group talks and stuff like that anymore. There was a time I did, but I have lots of problems with anxiety, and public speaking is not so good for that. So it's not really something I want to do. And I was basically told that open source contribution by itself is not enough for that. And you know what? That's fine. I don't. It's not something I need for my career or anything like that. And it's not. It doesn't bother me. It's more that it's like there's a sort of proud part of me. It's like I want some recognition for doing this thing. Not just from thank you here and there, but it's not something I need for my career. I don't want to do user group talking and that kind of thing. So it's fine.
And that's exactly what I meant. I mean, I might have not used the right words, but it doesn't say the MVP award isn't like this is a premium open source contributor or this is a premium in-house developer somewhere. It is more a recognition that you are involving the community in talks, teaching people. It's like I would say it's like a teaching award. You did teach a lot of people with user group talks, with writing blogs. There are a lot of ways. Or also, open source is recognized, but as a part of it. But I wouldn't. I had. It's my first MVP award, and I got it also for the conference talks, not for my open source project alone. So I wouldn't get bothered by not having an MVP.
No, it doesn't bother me. And what I think I would find more valuable is big companies that make use of the software.
Exactly.
Coming along and wanting to not necessarily money, but wanting to contribute their time to help support the project in some way. That's something that I would actually find very valuable. More so than an MVP or whatever.
Exactly. People hang themselves up sometimes on to getting an MVP award, and then they think it's some kind of a recognition for being a great developer or something like that, and that's not the case. It just awards you for for some community work.
Two thoughts about that. Back to still the MVP award. I would lie if I would say that at first when I started the project, I didn't have that in mind. I mean, it was on my mind, and I mean, you should. Have you been nominated, Matthias? Meanwhile, and this is the point where I want to come to. Meanwhile, I don't care anymore. There was a time when I was very serious about it, and when I would have felt very honored to receive one. In the meantime, I look at the award in a different light also. You can see plenty of blog posts also around that where people say the image really changed over time. It's not what it used to be, but also now if I reflect correctly, I think the biggest reward for me with that project, and that also takes a lot of time to actually do it, but what's even more rewarding is meeting all those people that I have met in the process of maintaining that project. Also of going to conferences. I mean, we wouldn't know if it wasn't at the conference in Kiev a year back. And also Rodney, for instance, and all the others. What I just mentioned about the people that have joined as sponsors wouldn't have been possible without that.
Yeah, just my 2 cents to that. The MVP award is really a great award. So, and you get a lot of great connections through it. But it doesn't come along just it doesn't find you, or in many cases it doesn't find you by itself. So what I did is ask some fellow MVPs for a nomination, and I also asked Microsoft for a nomination, and then they looked at my contributions and said, yeah, sure, do you want to do it? And so I would, if I wanted it, I would just ask for it. I also could nominate you if you wanted.
It's probably good. It's probably good for promotion, etc. I mean, not denying that, but also it comes with a bit at least of work that you have to put in, like filling out all those. At least I heard it. You have to fill out a few forms. But yeah, it's.
But the great thing about it, and that's the last thing I say, but it gives you access to a lot of great people you wouldn't necessarily meet on the regular way. So you just get into touch with that, and Microsoft facilitates some meetups around that, and you get into touch with a lot of great guys. It's not so much that you get some great other benefits. So you get a Visual Studio subscription. I'm on a Mac, so Visual Studio is not so good.
I haven't used Visual Studio for years, so
yeah. And you get an Azure some Azure benefits. But apart from that, the best thing is that you get connected to Product Manager in Microsoft and get early access to information around products and release cycles. That's the great thing with the MVP award, I have to say. But it's not so much that it says you are a great guy, even if you went to every conference on the world and did great talks there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you get an MVP award, because sometimes you have to ask for it, like I did. I asked, and then I was nominated, because sometimes people like I don't run around in the world and nominate people. Well, but if somebody asks me and I think he's a good guy, and
what I want or would like to make this award meaningful, and like I said, meanwhile I don't care that much anymore, but let it be. But what I would like this award for is that it would be given to open source maintainers voluntarily. I mean, like without further, at least for let's say projects above 500 stars or something.
But that would be a different award.
Then let it be. Call it I'm just most valuable maintainer or something. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I don't get hung up on things like that. I think like the greatest thing for me as a open source contributor is to see people use this stuff, and it's great. I mean, a lot of companies are now using Hot Chocolate, and they also let us now use their logos, show that they are using Hot Chocolate on our website. That's a recognition. I think that's much greater to see great companies use your software and deciding for your framework. I mean, that's also a great thing. And I mean, Jeremy, I mean, with Fluent Validations, you have like thousands of people using your stuff, so you should be.
I think I checked the other day, and obviously, like NuGet downloads are not representative of how many people are actually using a library, because but it was, it's at 48 million, and I was like, wow, but that shot up from when I last looked.
Yeah, that is an award. I mean, put that that's a badge. I mean.
But I would love to see the breakdown of how many of those are build servers versus actual real projects using.
But it. Also, you have to factor in that a lot of companies are using VSTS, Visual Studio Online, or TeamCity or stuff like that, and they are actually caching the download. So it could be much more if the build servers pulled it all the time from NuGet.
Yep.
So I think it would be actually more if everybody put there. So
that's one thing I'd love to see from NuGet is better stats for project maintainers. I'd love to see sort of breakdowns of, which version of .NET are they running on? Are they pulling in the old .NET Framework version, or are they pulling in a modern Net Standard version, or whatever? Those kind of decisions about which frameworks to support and that kind of thing could really be informed with that kind of data.
I think currently it's worth asking that one person on Twitter. Actually, I will get you the name, but they've been investing a bit more recently in the web appearance of NuGet, including that you should be able, or at least it's a plan as far as I know, that you can browse the package content online instead of downloading it, extracting it, etc. And yeah, I think in terms of statistics, they also wanted to add something, but I'm not sure exactly about the .NET versions, etc. But that would be interesting as well. But I will get you the name because I know he's been very active recently on Twitter.
Also, they have these. The problem is the stats are not refreshing that often. Sometimes they have also those phases where it's for 1 week, it doesn't, and then like thousands of downloads are added.
Yep.
And it doesn't. It isn't not as fluent, I would say, or as good as in the Node world.
How does it work in the Node world?
With npm, it's much better refreshing. I think the stats are much more often refreshed.
Okay.
And also they have some. I mean, Microsoft is going in that direction, like with the local tools that they now have. That is something like you can do with npm modules, where you have some tools in your package.json reference. So they are adding more and more features that you have in the JavaScript world, but there's still lots more that they could do.
Can that also be part of some kind of telemetry tooling, or that you can put yourself into the library or something?
That would be.
How does that work? I have no idea.
I like the idea in theory. I'm pretty sure that would fall into GDPR issues and that kind of thing.
And then you start putting Google ad trackers in there to get some money. Then we are mining if what kind of person is downloading your package. And so if you're using this kind of package, you're 40 years old and you're...
But how is Microsoft doing it exactly? Because they also have the telemetry in the .NET SDK.
Yeah, but it's controlled by one entity. If you could start putting code in that starts telemetry, maybe even on the desktop system, then that would be...
Yeah, I think people would get upset.
Yeah.
And,
Because I'm not Microsoft.
I guess. I don't know. I'm sure they'd get upset with Microsoft as well.
No, because you could exploit it.
Yeah.
You just could exploit it. Then we get into...
Okay, yeah, maybe.
GDPR and all that. It's very...
Imagine you're downloading a package and then you have to click thousands of these checkboxes that you are okay with being tracked and committing it.
Yeah, that would be a frustrating experience.
Yeah, but 48 million. That is.
Yeah. Another way would be to let them generate an API key, and they just have to give you the data. Actively to generate an API key.
But Jeremy, have you opted into GitHub sponsors?
Yes, I have one sponsor who I'm very grateful to.
So since when have you opted into it?
It was fairly recently. I think it was I think it was like a few months ago. Okay, but I have to say, I mean, I have 5 sponsors. It's not much on GitHub sponsors. But as soon as I started GitHub sponsors, there came a sponsor along. It is
a system where people interact, I think, more easily with it and are more likely to give you something. Maybe over time it grows.
I hope so. That would be nice.
And since they're sponsoring you $5, yeah, it's actually 10 at the moment. Oh.
Yeah.
Because they are doubling it.
Brilliant.
No, I think that doesn't work any longer.
I can see still that mine is being doubled.
Really?
Yes. There's a pot of $5,000 that they will double in the first 12 months since I signed up, and I'm still. Maybe it was just for the. You can see that
maybe,
if you
maybe it's that, yeah. Because I thought that was only for a certain period of time when
12 months.
Yeah, no, I thought it was for the time when you joined the, the beta for GitHub sponsors. Anyway, one interesting thing is, and I'm currently maybe also a question for Jeremy is how far did you go to how to say put put that into people's faces?
Not very. A couple of tweets and that kind of thing. Part of the issue is I'm incredibly lazy, and as well as that, it's just it's not something I need. I have a good job. I have very little outgoings. I don't need a lot of money to be sponsored for this, and I feel kind of bad if I were to keep asking people about it, because it's like I don't need that. There's people that actually could benefit from that kind of thing, much more than me. So it's not something that I've ever been particularly keen on, like pushing. Like it's there if people want to, but I've never intended to push it into people's faces. Maybe that's the wrong approach, but
yeah, it depends. If you're like for me, it's I would really love to live from open source. As I said. So if there would be a way to live from those sponsors, and I saw a few people doing it, I don't have to be rich, but it would be great if I could just focus everything that I do onto my project. I would be all in.
Well, I think everyone who starts with an open source project has this idea that they can help someone in their day job. Right, especially if you have that, like I said before, that vision where you think, okay, let's not just go to that mile until it fits my needs, but also to have more ideas on how to do that on a more general level. But one thing what changed for me over time, I must admit, is and maybe it's again unique about build systems, but I had a couple of very, very bad situations, and I'm that kind of person that takes them very serious. I mean, I can't really deal with them on a level where I say, okay, it's just one single person and let it go, and let's head over to the next. I mean, it was very, very demotivating. I had like over the 3 years, like 3 or 4 times maybe. Something's happening.
Desk descending.
Desk descending, exactly.
By the way, your laughing has potential for a villain or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that way, I must say that, and that's why I said it's motivating again, a bit more, receiving a bit at least. It's not just a bit. I mean, I'm quite happy with what came so far. But if I wouldn't have that, I think there would have been a moment already where I would have stopped, because maybe I see this in a bit more how to say, maybe I'm less. I'm searching for words. Maybe I'm less tolerable regarding such situations. Like Rodney said, he has a lot of feelings for people if they come to his project and they have an issue, a release is not working, etc. Then he said something like, "Oh, I feel guilty and I hide in that corner." I actually don't feel that guilt, because I think in the end, every person is responsible themselves to kind of keep track of what's happening in the project. I mean, I do the best I can for making it discoverable for them, but at the same time, I can't really tolerate that behavior back to me. And I think I'm very strict in that regard. I told Mike already one time ago when I had a situation, and yeah, maybe it was also a bad time for me because I was in the middle of moving apartments. I was like hell annoyed of like everything. I still wanted to look into issues and still try to help people, but then there was this one situation where I couldn't really keep calm, let's say. Am I the only one?
But that's when I said to you, it's good to have a second person in there, because then you can
right. Yeah.
then you can talk to that person and let your frustration out with him or her.
I just tend to rant on Twitter. You know, I don't.
That's the other option.
Yeah. I end up feeling like I don't know what's the word. I get really twitchy if someone needs help with something and I don't help them right away, because I know that request is sitting there, and it's like, well, they need help with something. I want to help them with that. I want to sort it out. I want to fix this problem, and I've had to learn to be a bit more disciplined with that. And I'm not very good at it. But trying to. I haven't had that many like super negative experiences. There've been a couple of times where someone's come along and they've been incredibly demanding about something that they want in the library, and then they expect me to, build it for them then and there. Those kind of things upset me and make me angry. I try and be as polite about it as possible, and then I block the person. Well, okay, you're going to be like that. I'm going to block you, and you won't be able to create any more issues. Goodbye. You're not worth that headspace, because it makes me feel bad, and it makes me feel angry, and it makes me feel anxious when someone does something like that. And it's like, you know what? I'm not gonna give you the mental space in my brain. I'm just going to block you and move on. But it's taken a while to get to that point where I'm comfortable enough to do that, rather than just feeling incredibly guilty about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's difficult how to handle people, and so I talked to another maintainer once, and I saw an issue. So there's the maintainer of GraphQL.js, who's called Ivan, and I saw once an issue that was, in my eyes, very rude. And said it can't be that he talks to you like that. And then he told me one thing that I always keep in mind now. He said, I can understand his frustration. If you put yourself in his perspective, in the people's perspective sometimes, then this rudeness in many cases falls away, because people sometimes are just frustrated with a solution, and they cannot move forward, and they are stuck, and sometimes they are then frustrated and might act out in a rude way. And it's good to de-escalate in most cases. If they are getting too rude or too demanding, then and you have to move on.
that's a thing where I can't really agree. I mean, I'm not there to put myself into other people's shoes and to feel their frustration. I mean, if I got that right, because, and this is I don't want to be seen as someone who's sitting there on top and has built that framework. Absolutely not.
No.
I said that multiple times. I want people to stay focused on a technical level. It's great if they're friendly and leave a couple of good words. That's totally fine or very much appreciated. But I don't want to see their frustration, their anger, or anything else, because it doesn't matter to me. I'm not buying. I'm not bought into this just because I provided a library or something, and I want them to keep that out. Definitely.
Yes, I agree with you that people shouldn't acting in that way. But I also experienced that staying calm in those situations and de-escalating these things has led to a lot of valuable people that streamed into the project. Sometimes it's also if you read something, you might even get it in the wrong context. And sometimes things are even not meant in a rude way, but you take them rude. That's why I always, if something doesn't feel right, I sleep over it, and sometimes it appears in a different light in the next day. I'm just saying, if you keep calm.
I try. That's something I always try and do. I do remember one time though where I woke up in the middle of the night and checked my emails, which is always a mistake to do in the middle of the night, and saw this issue that made my blood boil, and I sent this very hasty reply, and why that's so rude, completely unacceptable. Went back to sleep, and in the morning I thought, I shouldn't have sent that reply, with hindsight. Thankfully it actually turned out the whole thing was a dream, and I didn't actually do that. But I've come close. If my subconscious was thinking it, then yeah.
Yeah, it's sometimes even, and I came into these situations more often than I can think of. It's maybe even you are under pressure, and you have something on your mind, and then there comes this mail from a user of your API that says, yeah, something doesn't work here, and you take it in a complete different way at that moment. And that's why I always step back and then reevaluate, and also try to answer just very calmly to it without any emotions in it. And there are rude people out there, but in most cases, if you just try to put yourself on the other side, then most of the times it turns out well. And
yeah, I think in the 12 years I've been doing this project, I can only recall off the top of my head 2 people who have ever been so rude that it's upset me, and only one of those I ended up blocking because the other guy apologized. So it's two people in 12 years. That's actually a pretty good going.
Yeah, I have similar experience. If you and even with the people I said, there were some users that said they will leave if we don't implement it. In the end,
okay.
Yeah, but I didn't say that. I said actually that I'm sad to see any people leave from my project. We always try to integrate them, and that we can help them implement that, but we will not do the work. And they started doing.
That's so funny. Yeah, we'll move on to the next framework. Okay, I take back my package, and you get back your. Oh.
Actually, I would never go to someone that is doing that work for free, for something that is essentially free for that person, and I even get free support for this project. And I would never say something like that. I would maybe ask, okay, I really need that. Is there some way I can implement that? Then, if the maintainer doesn't want to do the work at this moment in time, then you can also implement that.
I mean, I wasn't emotionally touched or something, but I just found it funny. And Toro, who's watching, also saw that comment. It was funny one time when someone says, and I'm paraphrasing, I want to give another vote to support the large group of enterprise developers using Visual Studio to have better integration. I thought, like, okay, yeah, thumbs up. I don't know. Funny. I must say, looking a bit back when I joined GitHub, and that was way before I started my first project. I also left not so great comments. I was hinted about that and then apologized, but yes, sometimes, I mean, it was maybe also a bit about a language gap, because I used the word awful instead of well, what would have been better, disorganized or something, but I used awful for describing a UI. And
that's what I mean, Matthias. Sometimes the people either are missing the language experience, and they're using
But that is something I usually very, very quickly try to eliminate. I mean, the chat, or I try to make sure if it's about the language gap or not. Often you can read that between the lines when people write an issue, but other things are quite uproot, right?
Yeah, but what I say is there are many factors. There is also culture. Like we Germans, for instance, are very direct, which can be presumed as also rude in some instances. Like, I don't know.
Like me telling Rodney to appear here, right?
Yeah, my British family, for instance, is also they. So my wife is British, yeah, and they have a complete different feeling about nakedness. Like when I invited my
you run around naked?
No. The funny thing that is something in Britain which is very, very different. Okay, so when my parents-in-law came over, I said to my wife, "Why don't we go all in the sauna?" And my wife went completely white, because
that was
we Germans.
idea.
That's a few years ago. But when they came over and visited us, I met them before. So, right. But they came the first time to Germany, and they said, "Let's go to the sauna. It's cold and it's nice to go to the sauna." My wife went white, because we Germans go naked in the sauna, and in Britain, if you go in the sauna, you have a towel on the hair. You are not naked. She said, "We cannot do that with my hair." But as a German, it's okay to do, but it would have appeared very rude to my parents-in-law, maybe. And that's cultural differences. I just want to say.
I'll share one positive story, as we've been talking about rude people. So our positive story was, this was quite a few years ago now, but I got a message from an American guy who uses Fluent Validation, and he happened to be in London around Christmas one year because he was visiting his wife's family. She was British, and so they'd flown over, and they were like, "Oh, if you're near London, as a thank you for Fluent Validation, can we buy you dinner?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that would be really nice." So yeah, I met this couple, got a free dinner from it, and then they invited me to stay with them in Florida for 2 weeks, and yeah, so I got to stay in their really nice house in Florida, and we went and did loads of touristy things. So that's a nice that's
And you later then went there.
Oh, if we are talking about Americans, right? 2 or 3 years back, I went with my wife over to. So I regularly go to build conferences and stuff, and my wife and son, were also coming always, and we drove through America and did a road trip. And at a couple of restaurants, the patrons just paid for our food because they liked us as a family.
That's so nice.
So, yeah, so in Germany that would never happen. Maybe the person would come in and ask for money, but nobody would pay for your food. And I found that really great. I mean, that is a very good experience in America. Very nice people. Because you said that you essentially had the same experience there. Somebody paid for your food. Maybe it's rude from us tourists that come to America not to do that. Maybe you should in America just pay for other people's food sometimes.
I do have some funny stories though. There was another time I was in the US, and I'm kind of going off topic now, but
yes, go on.
This has been I was working with an American company, and I had flown out there for a conference. After the conference, we then flew up to New York, and we were going to drive across the border into Canada because we were going to have a company meeting at Niagara Falls at one of the hotels, and we got stopped at the border, and they wouldn't let us through because when we had flown into Florida for the conference originally, they hadn't stamped our passports. They just used the electronic passport system, and so the Canadian border police were like, "Well, you have no proof that you are coming from the US legally." So we had to go and wait in the border, waiting area for like 2 hours while they went and did some checks on our passports or whatever. And eventually they came back to us and they would say, right. Oh, and meanwhile, the cab driver had to wait there with us as well. So we were racking up this taxi fare. And eventually they said, okay, you can all cross the border into Canada. It's fine, except for your cab driver, because they'd obviously found something in his background check or something. And he had been doing this run across the border for years. This was his job. And all of a sudden we managed to destroy his job somehow. It was awful. They were like, no, sorry, you can't come in anymore.
It's awful. It's awful that I laugh, actually. It's really awful that I laugh, but it's typical. I once you're in America, everything is good, but the border is always like something. You always hear so awful stories about people getting hauled off or the MacBooks getting ransacked. So I'm happy this never happened to me.
Well, it was an interesting time.
Yeah, but I'm always over preparing, making sure weeks before that I have all the papers to go to America. But the country is really great, or at least the parts where I went, and at the time I went there. I don't know now.
Yeah.
I must say, meanwhile, when they increased the security rules for entry with all that, being able to, take your devices, log on to that. I already had that plan to, delete and then restore freshly from the other side. I mean, other side of the border, just to not have anything on the hard drive or anything.
Yeah, but the thing, I'm not worried about the things that I mean. It's a privacy concern, right? But I wouldn't be concerned if they search my device or even take a copy, because most of the code is open source, so they could just clone it from GitHub.
Oh, no, it's not about that. But I don't have. Sorry, I don't know about you, but I don't just have code on my notebook. I mean, there are also photos. There's Dropbox login and all that stuff. Not everything synced, but yeah, potentially they could also have access to that.
Yeah, I have my photos in iCloud, so
yeah. But if you're logged in and they just clone your whole hard drive or something in the meanwhile, I don't know. I mean,
I'm not saying that I'm okay. Like it's a bad feeling if any state violates your privacy rules. It's always not good.
I've never been too bothered about the electronic side of it, because I kind of figure Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever, it's all owned by American companies anyway, so they can probably see what I've got in there.
Exactly.
But one thing that did worry me one time was when I traveled to America with my guitar, and the border people were trying to decide whether they were going to rip apart the case. It was a hard case, and rip all the fur out to see whether there's anything hidden in there. I was like, please don't destroy my case.
I agree. That's why I'm also not so worried about they cloning my hard drive. I mean, it's not that I necessarily would like that to happen, but in the end,
but for that it's mostly the people in between.
Yeah.
Is it still TSA? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be bothersome, because then you would go through having to reset every password that you have and stuff like that. I agree. I agree. But
so Jeremy also plays guitar. Good to know.
Not very well.
Not very well.
Me neither.
But you have two the guitars in the background.
Mine's not in here. My piano is in the background over there somewhere.
So not very well. So you're not playing very well, but you have two guitars.
So there are hundreds of people outside who have a car and can't drive. So sorry, hundreds. I meant millions. I have no idea. Yeah, I started after school, although school would have been the better place because you're much cooler if you play guitar. But for me, it started right afterwards, and but only learning it myself, and a bit of covers here and there. Sometimes to relax, sometimes to surprise someone. If I learn a new song or something, and record that or some, but nothing really serious. Something what was interesting was when I worked in Vienna, when we had the band with inside my team. So my best friend, he's still my best friend, by the way. The person with who I've been working with, he played drums. My boss was playing bass, and some other guy was playing guitar as well. And that was perfect, basically.
That's fun.
All right. 2 hours almost. Do you want to wrap up?
Yeah, let's wrap up.
Sounds good. Yep.
I still have to ask Jeremy. Was that a format you enjoyed?
Yeah, it was great. It's just nice to have a chat. I much prefer informal chat rather than some kind of interview thing.
Yeah, I was like the beginning.
Even then, it was fine.
Yeah, I was just wondering because you messaged me by yourself and said you would like to be part of it, and probably at some point I would have asked anyways. But yeah, I just wasn't sure before if it was for some particular reason.
No, I just thought it was fun. I enjoyed the ones I saw before, and I thought, oh, it'd be nice to have a chat. So I don't really get a chance to chat with people about .NET much anymore, as my job's not .NET. So it's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should really come back to the .NET community. It's now so much fun. I mean, since .NET Core, it's so much fun now.
Yeah, I was about to ask, did that change that feeling towards .NET with .NET Core in any way, or?
I don't know. Like .NET Core in the early days was just a massive pain because every release was breaking Fluent validation, and I was kind of like tearing my hair out that every preview release was breaking something.
Not even that. In the beginning, they experimented with tooling, and it broke everything. Like the project JSON, which was a
oh, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I mean
that already.
Although I have to say, David Fowler tweeted that they should now get into tooling again and rethink the tooling change. I also agree they should do something about tooling, but they should experiment before.
It was hard going back then, and it's stabilized as time's gone on. But I still dread new .NET Core preview releases because it's like, okay, what are they going to break this time that I don't know about? But there's one guy, and I can't remember his name, on the ASP.NET team, who seems to be dealing with like their validation APIs and stuff. And nowadays he usually reaches out to me when something's going to change to see what impacts that will have, and that has made a massive difference. That I know that there's someone who I can talk to
yes,
on the ASP.NET team about that kind of thing if something goes wrong. But still, I get this sort of sense of dread every time a new .NET Core preview release is due to be released. It's like, what unknown changes is this gonna cause that are gonna break things for me? But in terms of apart from that, like working with Fluent validation on .NET Core has been much nicer than working with it on .NET Framework, and I'd quite like to drop support for .NET Framework at some point, but probably not quite yet.
I would like to drop it when .NET Core 2.1 goes out. I think I'm going to drop .NET Framework.
It's next August. That was the time that I was also thinking of doing the same thing.
Because it's a good. Then I want to drop .NET Standard, and with that .NET Standard 2.0, and that with that .NET Framework completely.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And good riddance. I think if they didn't do the whole swap to .NET Core, the .NET platform would be dead.
It would certainly be very stagnant, I think.
Yeah, stagnant and dying, because there are other languages that really picked up, like Rust and stuff. And people would, over time, jump more to that, and it would .NET would have become some kind of a COBOL. But because they did this switch, and I mean there was a lot of risk involved in doing such a change. And if I don't know if you remember the first .NET Core releases, they didn't have all the APIs there. I really struggled in with a lot of things in the beginning to get the APIs that you need to do stuff. The type info API was rubbish with the reflection stuff. When you did something like that, was rubbish. But now it really paid off. It's really fast. You have very good low-level APIs, which we are using for our parser for GraphQL, and I'm really happy with the low-level memory APIs that Microsoft introduced. So you now can do much more low-level stuff with .NET, but also on the higher level language capabilities, they improved so much. So they really did a great job. I'm really happy with .NET Core, and I'm really happy when we can shoe .NET Framework for good.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it will take a bit more time. The biggest issue is with MS Build. If you want to integrate with MS Build in Visual Studio, you still need .NET Framework. I mean, if you want to write custom tasks which get executed.
By the way, Rider now supports .NET Core. Oh, they're running on but they are running on .NET Core now,
Yes.
not anymore on Mono, and that made a huge difference, I have to say, on the Mac.
Yeah.
Like memory wise, it was almost 50% less memory that they use now with some solutions.
I was never really watching memory, but yeah, I heard it.
Yeah, it made a massive difference. By the way, yeah, I'm a Visual Studio Code user, yeah, but the OmniSharp compiler is really rubbish. The OmniSharp compiler is really rubbish. Why don't you JetBrains guys give it a proper .NET compiler? Take all the good stuff out of Rider and put it on the Visual Studio Code.
Well, first, it's not a compiler; it's an analyzer.
Yeah, I don't care. Just put the engine under there. and make ReSharper for VS Code. I don't actually need the fancy stuff, just a stable version of OmniSharp.
Good that you only need the stable stuff. Good to know.
No, I'm actually running on my system is running on previews, only previews, .NET previews, Mac previews, and Mac OS previews. And yesterday I had to revert from Big Sur back to Catalina, so I'm always running in all the issues that there are. So I'm constantly.
I'm not sure what you mean. You mean the releases from yesterday or from tomorrow? Previews or previous?
No, previews. the releases from tomorrow. So VS Code Insider Edition, also Rider from the preview channel, everything preview. I don't know why I'm doing that to myself, but it's also risky. My conference talks also are all done on previews, but I always have a backup version. Yeah, like I should really have a backup laptop. Like, so okay, this is burned. Here's my backup. But it works out so far.
We talked about that last time in 2 weeks ago about that second laptop as backup. Yeah, I think the answer that made the most sense was to have maybe another like iPad or tablet in general, and have it ready to connect to a workstation machine or something. Because
I'm doing a lot of live coding in my talks, and
you can do live coding also with your tablet.
I mean, really, I don't believe so. It's a feel, and then you cannot type on this keyboard and stuff.
You do a lot of live coding?
Yeah.
Where?
Everywhere.
Airport launches?
Airport launches. Yeah, if you want me to, I could do it there. And by the way, this year really ruined my my senator status. Yeah, I'm still a Lufthansa senator. Yeah, I think I'm still next year. But I have to start flying to conferences again.
You know what? That's not even first world problems. That's Switzerland kind of problems. German guy in Switzerland kind of problems.
No, it's I really crave for the rubbish food on an airplane. I don't know. I'm having a cold turkey on conferences. It's all online now. And every conference talk, really, one of my daughters barges in and wants something. It's funny.
Just lock the door.
Lock the door. Also, I'm sitting. This was actually the Lego room of my son, and you have lots of Legos here. If I would show you the floor, there's so much Lego in this room. Let me show you. So see, there is a Lego part. I'm really sitting. The whole floor is just Lego. I'm really sitting, really on top of a huge stuff of Lego. And he's trying to get me out. He wants me to go back to work. Move out of his Lego room again because I'm showing him out and telling him, yeah, I have a meeting now. You have to go out. And he always says, I wish Corona didn't happen, Daddy, and you go back to work.
I would love for him to just break into the door and say something like, "Get out of my room."
Yeah, this is first world problems, you say it, but
Toto said only people without kids say stuff like that. Just lock the door.
Just lock the door. They start screaming outside you.
But kind of funny. When I was young, my parents locked the kitchen so that I don't burn myself or something. But at the same time, they also told me always take out your garbage. You know, like the paper from chocolate, etc. And you know what? Our kitchen had one of those windows where you can give through the food to the living room. So what I did when I was young, I took away all that stuff that was standing on the sideboard next to that window. I was climbing through that window, put my garbage away, went back, and put everything back where I thought it belongs to. But only then my mother said, and I was coming back, and everything was standing somewhere where I don't put it usually. What the fuck happened? It was me taking out the garbage. Yeah.
Family is funny. Jeremy, do you have any kids or?
Nope.
No. Okay. Yeah, they really mess up your life, but sometimes they are cute.
Sometimes I don't. Yeah.
My life was perfect with 2 kids. Then we made a third one. Since then, it's all going down the drain. Maybe my youngest daughter sometime in the future looks what I did on video stuff and watches this video and then she might come back to me.
I was about to say this is all recorded.
No worries.
Okay. I will stop here. Are you ready? I think 2 hours are enough. But it was lovely, and I just want to tell both of you, because you were here the first time. If at any point you want to join again, I will try to do this on a regular basis, like weekly, and invite people from here and there. If you ever want to join again, you're always free to join. It was very nice with you. Very enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so for everyone outside, goodbye. I'm hitting the end broadcast button now.